Hello, everybody. All right, so there we go there. All right, so Rick, how'd your day go today?
Yeah. No, still here. I'm
Yeah,
just sharing this out, so if
yeah.
I'm ro
Well, as always,
roboting, that's
yeah,
why.
yeah. As always, if for those who may be in the chat or even chat a little later, if you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. Uh, Anyways, Rick, I'll ask this again, see if you can answer this time. How'd your day go today?
Not too bad. I was just sharing it out and liking and all that. That's
Hmm.
why my computer's pathetic at the moment. So
Uh,
when I try and do more than one
oh,
thing
when
at
you try to do
once,
more than one thing,
so it
it
should be
kind
good now. I've liked, shared, and coming back.
of. Yeah.
Did you say something?
No, I just noticed. I was just seeing you watching your mouth seem to move, but nothing was coming out, through the speaker. So I figured maybe something was up.
Yeah, apparently, I guess what I was doing, going and liking and sharing and all that. StreamYard decided to mute me.
Huh. Yeah. Well,
So
anyways,
I didn't know that
well,
at first, but I got back in here and noticed I was muted.
hmm, all right. Well, with all that, would you like to do an intro right now? Maybe share any links to anything you're working on or anything like that.
Oh, well, I have stuff being worked on. I'm not necessarily working on it at the moment, but so I don't really have any links, just, except for my channel, which I'm not going to go and cause all that rigmarole that we just went through to get a link for that. But I think
All
most
right.
people can just look up on here on YouTube, Cross Comics, and hopefully you'll find me. I don't think there's too many named Cross Comics.
Or
Most of the
even
time
the
you see my
Pied
beautiful
Piper
face.
Hamilton channel as
Or,
well, the one you've been doing more stuff on lately.
yeah.
Hello, Barbary Count
Uh,
or Barbary Coast.
Coast.
Yeah. What's your favorite
What's your favorite person?
First
No, it
Nations
says nations, Quebec. Uh,
QC? I have no idea
um,
what that is.
well, Well, QC, if I'm right, that stands for Quebec, which of course is in Canada. That's the short form for Quebec here in Canada. Well, if you're writing to Quebec anywhere in the world, but I wouldn't say I really have a favorite. I don't know any of the First Nations that are in Quebec. If the QC is standing for Quebec.
I mean, First Nations, usually something like that almost sounds like, I would think maybe like native, in this case, native Canadians or something like that, like, much similar to Native Americans or something like that.
Yeah,
But, anyways, so, all right, well, yeah, QC is, okay,
QC is
cool.
Quebec. I guessed that correctly.
All right.
And of course, I know that just because I am from Canada myself. Right now I'm in
Hmm.
BC. I am from Ontario, but I will be going back to Ontario very soon.
Yeah. So with that, well, if
I've
you're not going to share any links
been
right
through
now,
Quebec a couple times, going down to the East Coast.
hmm, yeah.
No, not right now.
So
Just try and go find my
yeah.
channel, Cross Comics.
All right. So with that, and also
Subscribe.
Rick has of course been doing more stuff on his secondary channel, Pied Piper of Hamilton. You might want to check that out too. Catch some of his work where he does
Yeah.
uh, where he does like movie reviews and all that. So with that,
Yeah.
with that, so tonight we're gonna go over a couple articles from Bleeding Fool. The first one we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not comic book editors should get creator credit. Also, also, it was reported that Action Comics #1 just recently sold for a record $6 million. So we're going to take a look at that article as well, plus the wrestling wrap up, and then the This Day in Each History towards um,
End of
the
the show.
yeah. What's your favorite 1962 cartoons? Well, I don't remember any specifically from '62, but I liked a lot of the Hanna Barbera cartoons that came out during the '60s. Um, and I do know,
Yeah.
like, and I do
Again,
know. Yeah, go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
I was going to say something similar. I've probably seen some from 1962. I don't know usually when most cartoons were released because I was born a little bit after 62. It's about 11
Mhm.
years before I was born. So unless you were alive for quite a few number of years, you probably wouldn't have been watching cartoons at that point. And well, but I've probably seen some,
But
and
we would have
just
seen
like you,
them in
probably Hanna
reruns. So
Barbera.
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, probably just like you, Hanna Barbera stuff, or I'm not sure whether they would have been out then the Baby Huey and stuff like that. Casper, that would have been from that time period. I'm not sure
A
what
little earlier, the hard.
stuff
I
came
think
out.
if you're
Maybe
talking about the
Popeye.
Harley Quinn stuff, that was more the '50s. Um, let's see,
Oh, okay.
Popeye that the King Features syndicate produced Popeye cartoon, the one on TV, was started up in '60 and was still running in '62. And you, of course, were still having a lot of syndication of a lot of the classic Golden Age shorts from like Warner Brothers, MGM, Warner Brothers, and of course Looney Tunes, Merry Melodies, MGM with Tom and
Yeah,
Jerry, all that. They were also on TV by that point, but it's probably more or less a lot of the Hanna Barbera stuff. I would say. But anyways, so let's
yeah.
why don't we get into the first article here.
Sounds good.
Mhm. And just as a friendly reminder, if you guys haven't already, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. With that being said, let's get to the first article we're going to talk about tonight here. Let's see.
SP March 17 says, "What is the Jetsons Eep song? Episode song? I'm not sure exactly. Wait,
Oh, date. You're talking about the date with Jet Screamer. The date. That's when Judy. Okay, so Rockstar Jet Screamer in the Jetsons universe had a contest, and the person who wrote like a winning song would get to go on a date with him. What ended up
ah,
happening though is George thinking Elroy's code, which sounds so much like gibberish, that he just reject it and hope that that would kind of kill Judy's fascination with Jet Screamer. Um,
he put
no,
it in.
he put that in, and then that's how you got the oop, op, ork, eep, op, ork, eep, op, ork, and that means I love you. So, anyways,
Definitely funny.
uh, so let's get to the article here. Should comic book editors be entitled to creator credits? Article by Avi Green, published yesterday. And we see a whole bunch of like Marvel covers here. You got Hulk, you got a couple of Wolverines right there, you got Silver
Silver
Surfer,
Surfer, Power,
look like
X-Men.
Amazing Spider-Man right there at the very bottom.
Yeah, yeah, and X-Men. There was an X-Men on the bottom there.
Yeah, so let's see. Elk's here. Hey, Elk.
Hey, Elk.
Xena. All right, so let's get into this then. So recently, Marvel began adding Roy Thomas alongside Lane Wayne and Herb Trimpe as a co-creator of Wolverine. Forbes has taken to discussing all of these details, and now that was obviously now this is from the Forbes article that he's referring to here. None of the people involved knew it at the time, but Wolverine was destined to become the most popular Marvel character of the past 50 years, down to the present day. When well, I would think Spider-Man would have something to say about that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think Spider-Man might beat Wolverine in that.
Well, Wolverine still
Yeah,
is a pretty popular character, but I guess it's just Forbes' opinion on the matter. I mean,
yeah, yeah. There are definitely a few characters up there for sure. I think Spider-Man, of course, is um, the most popular because he has had the most out of all Marvel characters. I think he's had the most TV or movie type stuff.
mhm.
So, you know,
Yeah, actually, Wolverine didn't actually start getting much. I mean, prior to let's say the X-Men series of the '90s, the '92 to '97. Prior to that, I think, and well, I don't even know if he was even featured in the pilot for Pride of the X-Men, which was a
yeah,
pilot.
he was
Go
definitely in
ahead.
Pride of the X-Men because him and Kitty Pryde were became friends. They had a relationship, ended up seeming to have a relationship similar
Okay.
to what
So
Wolverine had with
prior,
Jubilee in the
I think,
90s.
yeah, I think prior to the X-Men series of the '90s, I guess prior to the X-Men then, and his guest appearance on an episode of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends were the only two times that Wolverine was featured in a Marvel cartoon prior to the '90s series.
Yeah.
And then starting with that one, he became a pretty relevant, pretty popular character. He was, you've seen him
Well,
more.
I'd say in the comics themselves, he was pretty popular. But just the X-Men did not have a major cartoon presence, um, really too much before then. You know, the closest thing they got was in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
Yeah.
And
Arbery Coast says, "Will people's asteroid cause chaos, or will? Oh, wait, what? No, will
I'm not sure what that Apophis.
Apophis asteroid cause chaos? I don't know. I haven't seen anything
Uh,
about that, so I have no idea. So, anyways, back to the article here.
yeah,
Down
yeah,
to the present day when he is co-headlining the upcoming Deadpool and Wolverine movie and Disney's breakout animated series X-Men '97. For decades, comics historians, in parentheses and Marvel, have given official credit for the character's creation to Wayne and Romita, while noting the original contributions of Trimp and Thomas, as well as subsequent work of Chris Claremont, John Byrne, Frank Miller, and others who helped mold Wolverine into the compelling character and global icon he is today. Recently, that changed with Thomas's name being added to the official creative credits, and many comics industry professionals popped their own claws, Wolverine style, at the thought of it. The change in credits was first reported by longtime comic book editor Bobby Chase, related on her Facebook page over the weekend. She wrote, "quote My friend my friend and Len Wayne's widow, Christine Velada, got a call from Marvel executive David Bogart, informing her that in the upcoming Wolverine and Deadpool movie, in parentheses, coming out this July, in parentheses, Roy Thomas will now be credited as the co-creator with Len Wein and John Romita Sr., and David said it's a done deal. I was standing in Christine's kitchen this past Sunday as she told me about the phone call. Of course, Christine is seriously concerned about Len's legacy. Len was profoundly important to the comic book industry, and that legacy is being changed for the worse 6 years after his death." And then, furthermore, from the article here, this set off a firestorm of controversy with many comic professionals and creators chiming in to give a largely negative opinion of Thomas's bid to get credit 50 years after the fact, when almost all the people with direct knowledge of the situation are dead. Yeah, that's kind of the way try to do things, right? After somebody's after
Yeah.
when there's nobody there to sit
To
there
and refute their
to
claims.
to refute the claims, it's a lot easier to get such a thing across. But I think I can understand. I think I can understand her concern is because you now go from 2 co-creators to 3 co-creators, right?
Yeah, that
And
means
at
the
least
money gets divided.
One has what was that, Rick?
The money, well, I'm not sure whether she's thinking it from this point, but of course, the money instead of divided in half is now divided in 3.
And that's where I was going. That's where I was going with it. Now, maybe you're right. Maybe she might not have thought of it. She apparently made the thing about Len, but when you add another co-creator, you kind of lessen the impact of the other 2, because now you have to
sure.
that now you have to acknowledge that, okay, this third person had as much to do with this as the other 2.
Yeah.
So rather than getting 50% of credit, now you just got chopped down to getting only 33% of the credit, or a third of the credit.
Yeah, and well, obviously, I don't know how much this guy, as an editor, had in creating Wolverine as a character. Um, I doubt he had much because ultimately, I think it's more the artist, of course, would come up with the concept for the look most likely. The writer would again come up with, fleshing out the character as a person. So the editor is just there to correct dialogue, maybe correct some angle type choices in the art or whatever, say about changing that sort of stuff up. So I'm not sure whether I say what I would say about an editor getting credit, like in that sense, anyways. Obviously, they should have credit in the comic book for its, as an editor. But just because you edit doesn't mean you have much to do with creation.
Right. Okay, before we continue on with the article, so Barbary Coach is asking, what is the first Hanna-Barbera cartoon? Well, it depends. If you're talking about the first cartoon that was produced by Hanna-Barbera Studios, it would have been most likely, I think, Rough and Ready back in 1957. But even before they went off and formed their own studio, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera actually directed a number of MGM cartoons, most notably Tom and Jerry. So I think they're at least directing. So, if you're talking about the studio Hanna Barbera, it was 1957's Rough and Ready, I believe, was the first.
Yeah, I would think pretty much think that's what Barbara Barbaria is
Barbarico.
talking. Barbary is talking about the actual company, not the people necessarily. Yes, the company is named after a couple people, but most people just when they think of Hanna Barbera, they think of the company, not the founders of the company.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyways, getting back to the article, and here's Avi chiming back in here. This is what Avi, I guess, had to say after following this statement. So, well, this sure sounds different from the time when historians were trying to persuade DC to give artist Bill Finger the proper credit for co-creating Batman with Bob Kane in 1939. And while it's not like Thomas hasn't ever done anything I disagree with, this is very disappointing to learn that, in contrast to the Finger issue, they're less sympathetic to Thomas if he was instrumental as an editor in bringing about Wolverine's creation. Forbes interviewed Thomas, and his defense is as follows. So now we're going to hear from Thomas to the Forbes article here, and they are acknowledging that Thomas was an editor on Wolverine here.
Yeah, but like Abby said, how much was he essential to the creation? And I think that's what everybody's probably thinking that he probably wasn't that essential. And yeah, we could be wrong, because most of the time the editor isn't essential to the creation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the company is, of course, because they
Mm-hmm.
usually might have something to say, about a character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So, as we continue on here, this going back to the Forbes article here. Quote, the situation is unfortunate because I am only trying to finally get credit for something where the facts have been known for many years, and I'm being portrayed as a ghoul trying to rob the corpse of Len Wayne for credit and money, unquote, he said. Quote, first and foremost, this is not a financial issue. I am not getting a penny. As far as I know, and it in no way takes away from whatever Len, in brackets Wayne, and John, in brackets Romita's families may be getting. If anything, I don't know what their financial arrangement is with Marvel. I'm already getting money from my other contributions to Marvel. I don't need Wolverine money. Thank you very much. Unquote. And then, so Thomas explained that as editor in chief of Marvel in 1974, he first conceived of developing a Canadian character to include in the comics to broaden the appeal. Quote, we had an international readership, and I had created international characters like, in brackets, X-Men, Banshee, and Sunfire before, unquote. So Banshee being the Scottish mutant who could fly
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
had the
with sound powers.
Sunfire, the Japanese fire, pyrokinetic, basically. He said, quote, I had four requirements for the character: that he be named Wolverine, be Canadian, be fierce because Wolverines are fierce creatures, and that he be short because superheroes are usually tall. Unquote.
Uh, uh, well, if he's telling the truth, those are, very distinct qualities about Wolverine, of course, and the character. But was the thing is, did he do that as acting as an agent of Marvel, saying, Marvel, like, yeah, I'm the editor in chief for Marvel, and I want you to create this character for us. Here are your
parameters.
things. I guess in a sense, yeah, parameters.
So Elk here is saying
It's,
people
I
bringing
guess
up.
in that sense, there is a bit of creation.
All right, Elk is saying here people bringing up slander
Go
about
ahead.
issues long after anyone can prove anything. They're saying it's not about money until suddenly it is all about money. All right.
Yeah, because just automatically, no matter what, he may not know the deal, the dealings that what's that? The other two families have with Marvel, but
Mm.
he knows they're getting money, and if he can get a credit, there.
Yeah, but as I said, I know Roy Thomas has actually gotten money. He's done quite a number of things for both Marvel and DC. He's got it's not
Yeah,
like he probably absolutely needs more money because he's probably getting a lot already. So
true. That's true. It just in some ways it's just, I guess it just ends up being a little fishy that the timing of all this.
mhm. Well, I think part of the problem people have is the fact that he's saying all this now after everybody else who was involved are not able to be able to refute what he has to say. You know,
Yeah.
uh, so that's
Well,
probably I think that's what's
the,
got a lot.
yeah,
Go
and
ahead.
there might be some people that maybe weren't directly involved, but might still know something, about the situation too. So but all the people directly involved obviously can't refute it because they're dead,
Right.
except for him.
All right. So
Anyways,
continuing on with the article here, Thomas said he wanted to introduce the character in the Incredible Hulk because the Hulk was one of the few Marvel characters not based in New York, and it would be more plausible um, to set the action in Canada. Thomas assigned the job to Wayne, whom he described as, quote, one of the company's best writers, unquote, confident that he would bring a unique spin to it. Quote, I could have assigned it to a different writer using my four parameters and John in bracket Romita's design. Um, Wolverine would have been something different because it wasn't Len writing it, but I still would have been co-creator, unquote. Um, though Thomas said there were no contemporary records or documents to substantiate this account, and nearly everyone with firsthand knowledge is now deceased, he said he has been telling the same story for decades, including in a 1982 interview with Marvel staff comic historian Peter Sanderson, and that his and that his collaborators, Trimp, Romita, and even occasionally Wayne, would corroborate it when asked, quote, anyone who knows me knows I've, I've never been shy about speaking up, unquote, he said. Now, um, going back to Avi and what Avi has to say in response to this, there are editors who've given rough layouts of an idea they'd like to have developed and assigned specific writers to realize said ideas. Thomas also spoke about this in Back Issue about a decade ago. I guess it's far from a surprise if the industrialist allegedly uh, offended at giving
Oh,
some credit for Logan's introduction, didn't have the energy to research the data as they did to lambast an imperfect but otherwise decent writer editor who did his best to produce entertaining stories in his time, which of course is a lot more than can be said of the PC ideologues running the asylum today. Now going back to the Forbes article here, let's see. First, before I do that, let me check the chat here.
nothing new in the chat.
All right. All right. Um, so Thomas also said he would not dream of taking credit for other characters that debuted when he was in charge, as he did not have a personal hand in shaping them. He also volunteered that one of the characters he is credited with co-creating, Marvel's The Vision, from his 1960s run on the Avengers, was done under similar circumstances, instigated by then Marvel editor-in-chief Stan Lee. Quote, they gave, in brackets here, me and artist John Buscema, unbracketed, the credit, and that makes sense. But if Stan wanted credit, I could have gladly shared it with him, as well as with Jack Kirby, in brackets, who created the 1940s character on whom Thomas's vision is partly based. Unbracketed.
Uh, it says claiming he's a victim of industrialists. And of course, that's Stan. I'm not sure whether Stan is credited with the vision at all. Um, now he's a victim. This is victimism.
Victimism. Victimism.
I'm not sure.
Claiming to be a
I'm
victim
not
of
sure whether I'd say he was claiming he was a victim, but I could see how it could easily be interpreted that way. Um, but yeah, I'm not. I know I did a thing back when Stanley died with a bunch of the heroes that he created. So I'm not sure whether Vision was in amongst those or not. I'm not sure whether Stan has been credited towards Vision or not. But
All right. So with that, let's continue on. And I guess that's a picture of Stan Lee back in those days, back in I guess the 70s. It looks like.
well, 78 at least or 79 because the Spider-Man calendar there.
Yeah. No doubt. Okay, editing error there. I don't think that. No doubt should be two words, not one.
Yeah.
No doubt, Lee gave similar assignments in all his time as editor publisher, and they have the gall to obscure that data. For shame. At the end, Thomas reminds everybody of the Bill Finger topic. And now back to I guess the Forbes article here. Finally expressing exacerbation at the tenor of the online discussion, Thomas summed up that this is for him, as both a creator and a comics historian, about setting the record straight. Quote, if somebody created a character, whether it's about money or not, they should be acknowledged, unquote, he said. Quote, it took longer than 50 years for, in brackets here, Batman co-creator Bill Finger to finally share billing with Bob Kane. Just because it took a long time to get the real story out doesn't make it untrue, unquote.
But and again, that was done. If I'm correct. Again, after Bob Kane and anybody that could verify things was alive.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I think it was Bob Kane's family that went and did it.
Well, it wasn't Bob
No, I'm
Kane's
not
family
saying
that
that.
did it. It was
Or well, not, I mean Bill
It was
Fingers.
Bill
Bill
Finger's
Fingers'
family that
family.
did it, and I know because
Yeah.
I remember his granddaughter actually went on Crow of Judgment and talked about it with Comic Crow. Um, so Comic Crow, Crow of Judgment is the brother of Dean, as in Dean and Vicky, if you know who I'm talking about. Um, Basically the same pair that Chris talks about.
Let's see. Elk says comic writers are the publishing industry's chumps. $1 billion characters created with the publisher owning all of them. Newspaper comic writers were smart enough to get lawyers and own like Calvin and Hobbes, Dilbert, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
the
actually,
thing
we
is,
did talk a little bit about Scott Adams recently because he was featured in an article recently on Bounding in the Comics. Went over that article where he got kind of got canceled because for wrong think.
yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, most of these creators are creating, especially for like if you're working for Marvel or DC, you're creating characters not for yourself. You're creating characters for the company. So that's why most of the time the company owns them. Things have gotten a little different in recent history. Like say somebody like EVS who's created a bunch of characters for DC, he gets royalties for those characters that he's created when they're used in various places, whether it be in the comics, movies, television. And I know similar. Well, I know that other people get the same stuff, royalties in that sort of way. You know, I guess it all depends on the contract that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
but yeah. If these people want money or what, well, I'm not sure what to say for this, but if you want to own the character or whatever, then don't work for a company and create characters
Right.
for them.
Go independent. Go independent. Is that what you're about to say?
Sort of like what I've done. Yeah,
Right.
like
All right. So, anyways, back to the article here. So, I think now getting back to Avi speaking again here. So, on this, there's a point to be made. If nobody had an issue with giving credit to Finger on Batman, why is it suddenly a problem when Thomas gets some on Wolverine? One can only wonder if this has something to do with how Finger is long gone, having passed away 5 decades ago, and thus incapable of making use of residuals, while Thomas is still around and could. Well, that's just insulting to the intellect, and many of these same alleged pros likely never condemned DC for abusing Finger's other co-creation, Golden Age Green Lantern, Alan Scott. And I do remember when I've read some of the Alan Scott stories in the past, some of the from like All American Comics and the Volume 1 of Green Lantern and all that. Yes, Bill Finger was one of the guys who helped co-create Alan Scott, Green Lantern.
Well, remember right now it's the guy that's writing the main article talking, so it's not him with the money. It's not Thomas talking about the money. It's Abby talking about the money. So because Elk says so much for it's not about the money.
Yeah, for turning him into a homosexual man a dozen years ago, something that's never been abandoned since, and they've likely never slammed DC for forcing the same component upon Obsidian from Infinity Inc. Thomas's own own creation even earlier, and all via one of the worst writers of the 90s, Gerard Jones. What's the whole point of these attacks on Thomas, the veteran who had far more talent in his time? In his time. If they don't respect even Finger, it should be noted that despite all the attention given to Finger years ago on these issues, much of the Green Lantern, Golden Age Green Lantern stories have yet to be reprinted, and even the aforementioned Infinity Inc. has yet to be reprinted in full to boot, along with possibly a few extra stories in the early 90s featuring some of the characters.
Oh, and I was actually going to say something about the residuals. Yes, maybe Bill Finger's not alive to receive residuals, but his family sure is, so somebody is alive to receive residuals for it, you know. So there's somebody that's getting that money.
So much for it's not about the money,
I respond,
according to Elk.
yeah. And I responded to that by saying the part that we're reading right now is from Avery, not from Thomas, and Thomas did say it's not about the money. How true that is, I don't know. People
Yeah,
say a lot
so
of things.
now to conclude, Thomas is clearly not seeking to diminish any residuals to Wayne's widow, let alone take away any creative credit from the guy who's also famous for creating Swamp Thing. So it would do a lot of good if anybody who's putting on a now classic display of ungratefulness would apologize to Thomas for attacking him with a complete lack of altruism. I guess because Thomas doesn't meet their PC standards. That's why they're hostile to him, and that's a terrible shame. And as
Yeah,
for quote global compelling icon unquote and most popular character, have the writers at Forge paid attention where Marvel's been going these days? Hard to say Logan's still iconic any more than Spider-Man after all the woke directions Marvel's taken since the turn of the century. Yeah, and I think and we talked about
yeah,
that aspect of it too. And one of the things one of the things that's been a big talking point um, in regards to
yeah,
Wolverine in the current X-Men 97 cartoon is how he has a quote unquote buddy relationship with Morph apparently, or has a interesting buddy relationship with Morph. You know, so what
yeah,
they're trying to
yeah.
imply there.
Well, they could just be good friends because there's always, buddies
Well,
going
yeah,
on.
and they
And
were
that,
they were, and that is true. They were
but
depicted as good friends back in the early '90s cartoon. Okay,
yeah,
but I think one
but
thing. Go
sorry,
ahead, Rick.
go ahead. I was just gonna say him saying about the iconic Wolverine is still iconic and Spider-Man is still iconic for Marvel. So I have to disagree with Avi on that part. Just because they messed with the characters doesn't make them any less iconic.
All right, so let's see, because it looks like Elk had a few
Oops.
things to say here. Let's see. Thomas attacks, then demands apologies from those that respond. That's victimism.
No, Thomas wasn't. Thomas was not the one demanding apologies. It was Avi demanding apologies for him. The last part of that was Abby talking, not Thomas.
I'm a victim as if you contradict anything I say. You're victimizing me.
Circular logic.
Circular logic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I kind of
so
agree with that aspect. Circular logic.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
stupid. It's
yeah, yeah.
so
It-
stupid.
yeah, yeah. There's definitely can be a lot of circular logic, but the thing is, I think, and I could be wrong. Elk might be misinterpreting who's talking because that part where it was saying about apologizing to Abby was or apologizing to Thomas. It was Abby speaking, not Thomas himself.
Hmm. Let's see. Let's see what. I suspect Abby um, is in cahoots with Tom. All right. Well, okay. So first off, let me correct everybody on his name. I believe it's Avi, not Abby
Abby,
or Abby. It's Avi. Avi
yeah,
Green. Okay. So
yeah,
I know V and B sound a lot alike. Okay, they sound very similar, but I think the
yeah,
guy's pronounced Avi. V.
yeah, yeah,
Avi.
yeah. Yeah, it might be just the way that I'm saying it that he thought it was a B, not a B, and that's all right. And he says, I expect that Avi
Like they're
is
working
some.
together on this issue.
Well, I don't know. It could obviously be, or it could just be this guy's opinion. Everybody has a different opinions a lot of times. Like if you go by what this guy says, um, Thomas, if you go by what he says, if it's true that he directed, shall we say, these guys to make this character and he gave them these parameters, then I can see how it's
He
possible
feels
that
he's
he,
entitled to the credit because he gave the parameters, and then I mean it's not, it's like, he basically had the idea of what he wanted and then left it to them to sort out the details.
and he says ownership of Wolverine just before a movie comes out will attract a lot of self-interested flim flam artists. Oh, that I can agree for sure. Um, the question is how long they've been fighting for this, and you know, I don't know about that. Like how long they've
Well,
been fighting
Thomas
for
has
this.
claimed he's been fighting it for years. Even citing an interview he did way back in '82, which was like what 42 years ago. You know, so you
Yeah,
know,
and I guess there would,
but
obviously, I don't think we could check it out that easily, but I'm sure people could look. He could quote it where the art interview was. I'm not sure whether it's still around or not. And he says he's been saying it to multiple people, for years. So again, I don't know for sure. I'm always highly suspicious when this stuff happens after the creator is dead or the
or
creators are
after
dead.
those who have been directly involved have been dead because
Yeah,
they can't necessarily refute, they can't necessarily support or refute what's being said.
yeah,
So, man, that was a pretty good discussion, though, wasn't it?
yeah. A
There's a
little
lot
bit.
of meat
It was
that
good
we.
article. It's definitely a little bit thought provoking in that area, but normally if you're just a regular editor on a book, see, I think the article title was a little bit misleading
Misleading.
because it says editor, and you're just thinking somebody who's been given the book that looks over. Okay, yeah, the spelling's right. Okay, you need to change this in the art. This blah blah blah. You know.
Actually, based on the article, I thought he was going to go after more the editors at Marvel who are pushing the woke propaganda, but that wasn't the case at all here. I thought he was, the now, granted, he did mention something about it during the article there, where
Yeah.
by comparison, but
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the finger
fingers.
stuff was not uncontroversial, and a lot of people thought it was BS. Yeah. So, anyways, let's we're already at
Yeah,
50 minutes here, so let's this next story I don't think will take us quite as long. Obviously, the second and last story we're doing tonight: speculators sell Action Comics #1 for a record $6 million. Article by Avi Green.
oh, geez, it's Avi again.
Yeah. Um, Published today, April 10th. And there's the cover of it. Of course, we all know this cover. We've seen it several times, several ways, and all that. So, okay, so the Hollywood Reporter announced that, to nobody's surprise, a back issue of Action Comics Premiere from 1938 sold for yet another record on the speculator market. And this is from the Hollywood Reporter article now. Superman has kept a world record, has leapt a world record in a single bound. Okay. An issue of Action Comics #1, which introduced the world to the Kryptonian hero, sold at auction for a record $6 million Thursday, making it the most valuable comic book in the world. It tops an issue of 1939's Superman #1, which sold for 5.3 million in 2022. Before that, the most valuable comic in the world was a copy of 1962's Amazing Fantasy #15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, which sold for $3.6 million in 2021. Wow, just think about it. Think about the people willing to spend that kind of money for a comic book. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
and yeah, really, the thing is, the top three selling comic books like that, there's three of them, and it tells you how iconic those characters are. Of course, there is Action Comics, #1, which is of course Superman, and I guess Superman as well. #1 does thing, but it's Superman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Detective Comics #27, which is of course the first appearance of a Batman, and then Amazing Fantasy #15. I don't think any character besides Batman, Spider-Man, and Superman you will find for selling in those price ranges.
Mm-hmm. I've got the cover in sight on my wall.
So is that just a printed out version that or something like that? Obviously, I doubt it's a comic book in your wall. Did you print it out? Did you buy it, print it from somewhere before, like a con or whatever? Elk. Well, he's answering that. We can probably get on with the next.
So back to Avi here. This is so predictable. Why should it even be written about in the press? Besides, the Daily Caller provided clues. It's one of the same back issues already spoken about in past coverage of these auctions. And this is from the Daily Caller article, I guess. The said comic issue hails from the prestigious Kansas City Pedigree Collection, which comprises nearly 250 pristine first edition issues released during the late 1930s to 1940s. NBC News stated the identity of the new owner remains undisclosed, but the comic boasts a rich history, having been owned by notable individuals such as actor Nicolas Cage, Lebanese billionaire Ayman Hariri.
Okay, now I've got to say something about Avi here. He complained about why is it even newsworthy? Why are they doing an article about it? Well, why are you doing an article about them doing an article? You're just as pathetic as he's claiming they are. And Elk says,
I mean,
no,
I
I
guess
have a $5
you
million
have
dollar
you have
comic
a
on
point
my
there.
wall.
You have a point there. No, I have a 5 million comic. Well, you forgot to put the dollar sign in there, my friend. No, I have a $5 million comic on my wall. I don't know if that's supposed to be sarcasm or what there, but
Yes, I think it is.
my cat ate it, so I replaced it with a compass reprint. The canvas
Canvas,
reprint.
canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do definitely think he's being a little bit sarcastic back at me. Well, I didn't honestly think it was the actual comic. I guess it could have been a reprint of the comic, but
All right. So, anyways, yup. This back to Avi speaking, of course. Yup. This has been brought up before, more or less. These back issues keep selling around the globe from temporary owner to temporary owner, who repeatedly sell it for a price at least slightly higher to the next bidder. It's gotten to the point it's grating already. Why can't we hear of these same back issues being donated to museums instead? It would be a huge favor for history without looking exploitive. Um, I can hardly wait to see the headlines that these Golden Age Superman and Batman issues got sold yet again. Surely, after less than a year, in next year's coming news report, next year's coming news report, even Spider-Man's early issues will doubtless make more appearances soon on the market. Now, before I continue on to the next line there, I do know that Avi has a bit of an axe to grind with a lot of these speculators because as I guess as I guess a fan of comic books, as somebody who I guess reads a lot of comic books and loves reading them, I think he you hear about people who just get into stuff for the money. It's like the idea is they just
yeah,
okay, I buy it for $1 million, so I'm going to make a profit on this because because I spent $1 million on it, so I'm gonna sell it for 1.2 million. I just made $200,000 on it. Then the next person might sell it for 1.5 million, making like 300,000.
yeah, yeah,
I think as a comic book fan, this gets, and I would think a lot of comic book fans, a lot of people love comic books, love reading comic books, love being able to look at comic books and have that
yeah,
experience. Would
yeah.
rightfully
Well,
be upset. Would rightfully be upset about it because these all to them to comic book fans, these are treasures. But all they
yeah,
are to some of these people is just money to be exchanged.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
I'll admit,
it's to them.
I care, but I don't care because somebody bought it. It's their right to do with it whatever they want. You know, um, you know, yeah, sure. If I ever had the money and got my hands on it, I can't see myself ever selling it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I doubt I'll ever have that sort of money to get my hands on it. That's another
Mm.
topic altogether. But like the question is really, why are these people selling it? Why did they buy it to begin with? Are they spectators like Nicolas Cage? I don't think he's a speculator or whatever. If he bought it, maybe that other guy that they mentioned, people buy these things for all sorts of reasons. They sell them for all sorts of reasons. And, it's up to them. Yeah, maybe they should donate it to a museum, but it's probably still being taken good care of, you know.
Mm. Yeah.
No matter, I would hope, no matter where it is. And just because the question then also becomes, how many, I don't know how offhand, obviously somebody might, how many of these are there, is the one that Nicolas Cage bought, is it him that sold it and at auction and somebody else bought it? Or was it just one that went up that somebody else had that, you know, decided to sell it?
Mm-hmm. I'm just taking care of some lighting issues in my room here. That's why I turned
Yeah.
my camera off. Just so.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice till you said something. Alex says it's just useless bitching. High price sales are free advertising for existing comics industry. Yeah, yeah, and that's another thing too. Um, we don't like you don't like the speculators. You know what? They come in and they buy comics. Yeah, maybe they're stupid enough to think that a comic that they buy, right now is going to be worth money in like major money in 5 years. It's like, hello, get a brain. The ones that are worth major money were made like 80, 60 to 80 years ago. You know, it's like you think just because one comic from 80 years ago sells sells for $6 million, that a comic that you buy today is going to be worth $6 million next week or in a couple of years. You're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Alex then says, and it makes people dream of entering the industry and creating something new and being part of a famous tradition. Yeah, I can agree with that. For some, for sure.
Well, I mean, some of that, what you were talking about with the free advertising too, that you could theoretically say that argument would work too, donating it to a museum, right? Because donating it to an art museum or a comic museum, um,
Yeah, but then you know
your
what?
free advertising argument would still work in that regard as well.
Yeah,
So,
but then the museum gets it, and one of two things: it'll be on display for a while, and then it'll be put in the back, and nobody will ever see it again. Possibly, possibly not. But this way, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, or maybe it's just whatever, and there's probably more whatever. I get it. I sell it. A few years later, I sell it. I sell it, or the person that bought it off me sells it. It still brings it to the spotlight. It brings the comic industry to the spotlight every few years with these things doing this and selling for these outrageous amounts of money. Where, oh, it got donated to a museum. It doesn't. You do that once, and it's like,
all right. Well, anyways, we're past the hour mark here, so we're gonna move on to the wrestling wrap up here. As like Rick says.
yeah, well, just before he said the museum won't sell it every year, making international news each time.
Yeah.
Like Rick said.
So with
Well,
that,
the book, that what those books don't get sold every year. It's more like every 3 or 4 years or more. But still. Okay, later, Al.
all right. Well, anyways, just trying to remember if there was any significant. No, yeah, there's not a whole lot aside from the fact that like Roman Reigns going to be taking time off until SummerSlam. Apparently, there hasn't been a whole lot in terms of WE news going on today. Now tonight's Dynamite, as we were talking about last night, on tonight's Dynamite on TBS, you have Adam Copeland, the former Edge, defending the TNT title against Penta El Zero Miedo. Team known as Lion Hook of Chris Jericho and Hook, teaming up with Katsuyori Shibata to take on the Shane Taylor promotions of Shane Taylor, Lee Moriarty, and Anthony Ogogo in a 6-man tag match. In a non-title match, Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada takes on Cristiano Argenta. In a women's match, Anna Jay takes on Mariah May. And then in a world title eliminator match, Samoa Joe takes on Dustin Rhodes. Also on tonight's on tonight's episode of Dynamite.
Wrestling wrap up. Oh.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about right now. The wrestling wrap up here on
Yeah,
tonight's
yeah.
Dynamite.
You were just
Go ahead, Rick.
you're just struggling for a word, so I thought that's. You were just struggling for a word, so I thought that was it. What you were struggling for. It's my bad.
Okay, no,
Sorry
on
for
tonight's
interrupting.
Dynamite, aside from the matches that I just mentioned, um, the Young Bucks, who are kind of playing the evil because they're vice presidents, so they're playing the evil authority figure characters right now. They're also set to challenge FTR at Dynasty, not this Sunday, but next Sunday, to become the first three-time AEW World Tag Team Champions. They're going to be showing the footage from last year's All In which that led to CM Punk getting fired. This is a lot of people believe that this is being done in response to Punk's recent interview with Ariel Harwani on an MMA radio show, I believe, in which he was basically critical of AEW and said, "Oh, Tony Khan just tries to be everybody's buddy," and some of AEW's responses have been said to seem like Tony Khan showing that he has thin skin. You know, they're going to show, but apparently tonight on Dynamite, they're going to show the video footage that happened between CM Punk and Jack Perry that led, of course, to CM Punk's firing, as well as Jack Perry not being on TV since then. And right now Jack Perry, the son of Luke Perry and a professional wrestler, is over in Japan right now, wrestling as part of the House of Torture faction over in New Japan. So, and now I just remembered something else too. On the WWE side of things. So there was a rumor out there that was suggesting that WWE was trying to possibly make some kind of arrangement with AEW to bring in Jon Moxley for WrestleMania, but that rumor has been proven to be untrue, as right now AEW and WWE are kind of at odds with each other, as it were, as I just mentioned. So with that, that's all we got for the wrestling wrap up right now. So with that being said, with today being Wednesday, April 10th, 2024, let's take a look back at this day in each history. History! So 1954, 2014. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to wish a happy 70th birthday to Peter McNichol. After Peter McNichol, of course, he was on Ally McBeal, but in the cartoon realm, he's actually played a number of notable characters. He's voiced a number of notable characters, particularly in DC cartoons. Among those include DC and Marvel. So here are some of the characters he's voiced in cartoon: Eliminator and Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law; Doctor Octopus in The Spectacular Spider-Man; Man-Bat in The Batman. Let's see. He was also David Clinton Kronos in the Justice League episode The Once and Future Thing. That was the two-parter. Among some of the other characters included Sidney Poindexter and Danny Phantom, Nigel and Rapunzel's Tangled Adventures, and Sibo in Star Wars Rebels. So happy 70th birthday to Peter McNichol, the actor and voice actor Peter McNichol.
Yes. Happy birthday to you.
All right, so now moving on to 2009, 15 years ago today. On this date in 2009, the team known as the American Wolves of Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards would defeat the team of El Generico and Kevin Steen for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Champions. Now, for those of you who may not know this, El Generico and Kevin Steen are current WWE superstars, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, respectively. So on this date, 15 years ago today, Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards defeated the team of El Generico and Kevin Steen for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships. So, now getting ready to move on to the next piece of niche history as we move ahead to 2014. On this date, 10 years ago today, the following anime premiered on Japanese television. Following anime premiered on Studio Gokumi's Atelier Eshia and Logi, Alchemist of the Sky. White Foxes is the Order a Rabbit. Seven's Inugami-san to Nekoyama-san. And A1 Pictures, Nanana's Buried Treasure. So those 4 anime premiered on this date 10 years ago on Japanese television. And finally, 5 years ago today, as soon as I pull that up, 5 years ago today, the 10th issue of Okay, so the 10th issue of the 5th volume of Catwoman went on sale on newsstands on this date from back in 2019. 5 years ago today, the 10th issue of the 5th volume of Catwoman from DC Comics went on sale on this date 5 years ago today. Sold for $3.99. It was 32 pages. It was written, there was no title of the story, but it was written by Joel Jones, art by Fernando Blanco, lettering done by Salda Temafonte, and John Calise did the coloring. So on this date, 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago today, the 10th issue of the 5th volume of Catwoman went on sale on this date back in 2019. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. Of course, before we close out, Rick, did you want to do an outro or anything like that, or
just for those that are here that don't know me, go check out my channel, Cross Comics, and check out my stuff, and hopefully you'll like it. And if you do, subscribe. I'm always trying to make new content. Sometimes it's not quite as often as I would like.
All right. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. So we'll be back here tomorrow night with we'll probably be most likely doing the Indie Comic Showcase. I'll have Tim Olson with me. I'll have Tim Olson with me for the next 2 nights, as he'll also be coming in on Friday as we continue our look back in comics history to February 1940, looking at books that went on sale February 1940. This week we're focusing in on books that went on sale from Centaur and David McKay. And then, of course, Rick, you'll hopefully be back here on Sunday, at least, right, for the panel
show.
Sunday. The Mikestand Weekend Edition. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.
It's only a day away.